You spend your life trying to be everything for everyone, chasing praise, avoiding judgment, playing roles just to fit in, but deep down, you feel exhausted, unseen, and lost. The truth is, you weren't born to live for their approval. You were born to live for yourself. In this video, we're not here to sugarcoat it. We're here to break the chains of people-pleasing and remind you of the power that comes from finally choosing you. If you've ever felt like you're living someone else's life, stay with me, because what you'll hear today might just set you free. 1. The illusion of approval. We don't realize it, but most of us are addicted to being liked. We shape our words, our choices, even our personality, just to gain a nod of approval from others. We seek compliments like their oxygen, needing that constant validation to feel enough. But here's the harsh truth. Approval is never stable. It depends on people's moods, opinions, and insecurities, things you can never control. One day you're praised for who you are, the next you're judged for the same thing. And if your sense of worth is tied to their applause, you'll always live on edge, never knowing when the approval will vanish. Buddhism teaches that clinging to what changes is the root of suffering, and approval is one of the most unstable things you can cling to. You become like a glass house, beautiful but fragile, vulnerable to the slightest criticism. But the moment you stop chasing approval and see it as the illusion it is, you begin to find peace. You weren't born to be molded by others' opinions. You were meant to stand firm, like a mountain, grounded in your own truth. You don't need to be liked to be enough. You don't need applause to be complete. The moment you believe your truth is enough is the moment you begin to live freely. Because when you stop letting their opinions define you, you finally hear your own voice. Approval feels good, but inner peace feels better. People's opinions fade, but your truth remains. Don't trade authenticity for applause. Approval is borrowed happiness. Freedom is owning your worth without it. 2. You weren't born to be a puppet. From a young age, you're taught how to behave, what to say, and who to be in order to be accepted. Be polite. Don't make others uncomfortable. Do what's expected. Slowly, these messages wrap themselves around you like invisible strings. Without even noticing, you start to perform. You adjust your tone so no one gets offended. You silence your opinions to avoid conflict. You chase paths that were never yours just because they make others proud. And as the years go by, you wake up one day realizing you've become a stranger in your own life. You're moving, but you're not free. You're existing, but you're not living. Buddhism teaches that our true nature is pure, unconditioned, and free. But when we let the expectations of others dictate our every move, we live in bondage, a puppet pulled by invisible hands. The tragedy is that the more you perform, the more disconnected you become from your real self. You forget what you truly believe, what brings you joy, what your voice even sounds like. And here's the truth most people avoid. No matter how perfectly you play your role, someone will still criticize you. So why not live authentically? Why not take the risk of being real? The moment you cut those strings, the fear of judgment, the addiction to approval, the need to be liked, you return to yourself. You become grounded, present, whole. You are not here to please the crowd. You are here to honor your soul. You are not an actor in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. Because pretending is exhausting, and peace only comes when you stop acting and start living. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs your truth. Speak it, live it, and let go of the need to please. You weren't created to blend in. You were made to stand out. And when you do, the right people will find you. Not the mask, but the real you. Start asking yourself, what do I believe in? Not because I was told, but because I feel it in my bones. What makes my soul feel alive, even if no one claps for it? When you peel away the layers of performance, What's left is pure, unshakable truth. And that truth will always be more powerful than approval. When you live as your whole self, not everyone will applaud, but the right people will recognize you. And more importantly, you'll recognize yourself. This is the real freedom, living without strings, speaking without fear, and finally breathing without a mask. 3. The cost of pleasing. Everyone pleasing everyone might look like kindness on the outside, but inside it's often quiet self-abandonment. You say yes when your entire body is screaming no. You smile to avoid conflict, shrink your dreams so no one feels uncomfortable, and apologize for simply existing as you are. At first it seems harmless, like the right thing to do, but slowly this habit eats away at you. You begin to doubt your instincts. You hesitate to speak your truth. And worst of all, you start believing that your needs are less important than everyone else's. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins when we disconnect from our true self, and nothing disconnects you faster than constant self-sacrifice. Every time you betray your boundaries to make someone else happy, you weaken your inner voice. And the more you silence it, the harder it becomes to hear it at all. The truth is, no matter how much you give, it will never be enough for some people. You will twist yourself into knots trying to please them, only to be met with silence, criticism, or more demands. And while you're pouring yourself out for everyone else, who's filling you? Who's listening to you? The world won't stop draining you just because you're tired. That's something you must decide to change. Living for others turns your life into a performance, one where you're the star, but never the director. You end up exhausted, hollow, and resentful, wondering why no one sees the real you. But how can they when you've spent years hiding her? Start protecting your peace, even if it disappoints others. Start saying no without guilt and yes without fear. Your worth isn't measured by how agreeable or available you are. It's measured by how true you are to yourself. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. It invites you to exist fully. You don't owe anyone your silence, your exhaustion, or your people-pleasing performance. The cost of pleasing everyone is far too high, and the reward of honoring yourself is peace, clarity, and finally coming home to who you really are. 4. Find your true voice. Somewhere along the way, you stopped speaking your truth. Maybe it was the fear of being misunderstood, maybe it was the fear of being rejected, or maybe you were just trying to keep the peace. You told yourself it wasn't worth the conflict. You learned to stay quiet, to nod politely, to blend in. But every time you silence your truth to comfort others, you bury a piece of who you are. And over time, it adds up. You begin to feel disconnected. From others, yes, but even more dangerously, from yourself. Buddhism teaches that truth is the path to liberation. And your personal truth, your voice, is not just a sound, it's your compass. It's how your soul navigates the world. The problem is, society often rewards silence. It praises those who are agreeable, who don't cause waves, who never make others uncomfortable. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes silence is self-erasure. And the longer you mute yourself to fit in, the more distant your true self becomes. You begin to forget what you believe, what you want, and what you feel. You become so used to adjusting your tone, your opinions, even your goals, that eventually you don't know what's real anymore. Your life becomes a mirror of everyone else's expectations, while your own reflection fades. But deep down, your voice never disappears. It waits, patiently, quietly, like a flame in the dark, waiting for you to breathe life back into it. That's what it means to live mindfully, to reconnect with that voice, even if it's trembling at first. Your voice is your power. It is the gateway to your healing, your purpose, and your freedom. And you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to be true. What do I really want to say? What have I been afraid to express? What truth have I silenced just to be accepted? Find that voice again. Speak it in small ways at first. Say what you mean. Stand up for what matters to you. Express what you feel, even if your voice shakes. Over time, your voice will grow stronger, and so will your sense of self. Remember, people might not always like your truth, but that's not your job. Your job is not to be liked, it's to be real. Because when you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your life. And no one, not the world, not your past, not your fear, can take that from you again. 5. You are not selfish. You are awake. They will call you selfish the moment you begin to choose yourself. The second you start drawing boundaries, protecting your peace, and honoring your truth over their comfort, you'll notice it, the shift in how people treat you. You've changed, as they'll say. You used to be so easygoing, so nice. But what they really mean is, you used to sacrifice yourself for us, and now you don't. Society has convinced us that goodness means self-erasure, that to be a kind, valuable person, we must put everyone else first, even at the expense of our own well-being. But here's the truth. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's awakening. For years, you were taught that being a good person meant being agreeable, easy to manage, selfless to a fault. You were praised for being the one who never complained, who always showed up, who never said no. But no one noticed when your smile started to crack. No one saw the nights you cried in silence, the mornings you woke up already exhausted. You gave and gave until the giving became a wound. Buddhism teaches that compassion begins with the self. Without self-love, there can be no authentic love for others. If you give while empty, you bleed instead of nourish. That's not kindness. That's slow self-destruction. You were not born to be a container for everyone else's needs while yours go unmet. You were not meant to carry the emotional weight of people who refuse to carry their own. When you awaken to this truth, it feels like betrayal, not because you've done wrong, but because you've finally stopped betraying yourself. Awakening is recognizing that burnout is not a badge of honor, that suffering is not a requirement for love, and that peace is not something you earn by staying small. It's something you create by taking up space with your truth. And make no mistake, many won't understand, especially those who benefited from your silence, your compliance, your lack of boundaries. They'll accuse you of being cold, distant, arrogant. They'll guilt you with their disappointment, but their reaction is not a reflection of your truth. It's a reflection of their dependency on your self-abandonment. Let them be uncomfortable. You are no longer shrinking to fit into spaces that suffocate you. You are no longer dimming your light to soothe their shadows. This is the sacred transition from people-pleaser to truth-teller, from doormat to whole being. And it's terrifying at first. You will feel guilt. You will question yourself. But the more you choose alignment over approval, the stronger your spirit becomes. You'll begin to recognize how peace tastes different when it's not earned through exhaustion. How love feels deeper when it flows from overflow, not obligation. You'll learn to rest without guilt, to walk away without explanation, to honor your inner yes and no with equal reverence. You'll also learn that being awake means becoming selective. Not everyone can walk with you into this new chapter. Some connections were only meant for the version of you that tolerated the bare minimum. And that's okay. Buddhism reminds us that non-attachment is essential to freedom. Letting go isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You are not rejecting them. You are simply choosing yourself. The next time someone says, "You've changed," tell them, "Yes, I've come home to myself." Tell them you are no longer available for relationships that thrive on guilt. You are no longer sacrificing your joy for temporary peace. You are no longer confusing self-neglect with virtue. You are not selfish, you are awake. And awakening is the most generous thing you can do. Because when you are whole, you offer the world your fullness, not your fragments. When you are at peace, you stop spreading pain. When you love yourself, your love for others becomes real, untainted by resentment or fear. You are not here to burn out for others. You are here to burn bright for yourself. And in that brightness, you become a light for everyone else. 6. Protect your energy. Your energy is sacred. It is your life force, quiet, invisible, but deeply felt. And yet most people treat it like it's infinite. You give your attention to people who drain you. You explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You say yes out of guilt, it's fine when it's not, and maybe later to your own needs that never seem to arrive. But here's the truth most avoid. Your energy is not free. Every time you give it away carelessly, something within you begins to fade. And eventually you find yourself tired, not just physically, but spiritually. That kind of tired doesn't go away with sleep. It only goes away with truth. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, not just of the breath or the body, but of what we allow into our lives. Every conversation, every environment, every connection leaves an imprint on your spirit. Not all of it is good. Some people feed you, others quietly feed on you. Some spaces make your heart expand, others make it shrink. And if you're not careful, you end up building a life where everyone else feels comfortable, while you slowly wither away inside. This is not kindness. This is unconscious self-harm. You must learn the difference between being available and being used, between being kind and being consumed. Protecting your energy is not about shutting the world out. It's about choosing what you let in. Just as you wouldn't let strangers wander through your home, you shouldn't let just anyone have access to your time, your mind, or your soul. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every invitation deserves a yes. And not every person deserves your open heart. It's hard at first. You were raised to believe that putting others first makes you good, that selflessness means giving endlessly, that denying your needs is noble. But Buddhism reminds us, the middle way, the path of balance, is where wisdom lives. You don't have to be cold to be clear. You don't have to be cruel to be self-protective. But you do have to be awake. Awake enough to notice when a conversation drains your spirit, when a room suffocates your presence, when a person makes you question your worth. The body knows, the breath shifts, the heart tightens. These are not weaknesses. These are signs. Listen to them. Start by saying no without an essay of excuses. Start by leaving when your soul feels heavy. Start by asking, does this feed me or does it deplete me? Start noticing how your energy responds to people when they walk into a room. And even more importantly, how it feels when they leave. Are you lighter or heavier? That's your truth. Honor it. Energy is not just what powers you. It's what defines your vibration, your frequency, your presence. And in a world that constantly demands more output, more responses, more availability, you must become the guardian of your inner sanctuary, not out of fear, but out of reverence. When you protect your energy, you begin to see how much of your exhaustion was never about doing too much, but doing too much for the wrong reasons and the wrong people. You'll see that some of your greatest breakthroughs didn't come from giving more, but from walking away. You'll realize that silence is not emptiness, it's protection. That solitude is not loneliness, it's restoration. And that boundaries are not walls, they're bridges back to your peace. Let go of the idea that you owe everyone your time. You don't. You were not born to be available 24/7, to reply instantly, or to say yes just to avoid discomfort. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to protect your mornings, your evenings, your sacred hours. You are allowed to disappear for a while, not to escape life, but to return to it fully charged. Not everyone who wants access to you deserves it. Some people only show up to take. Some only see you for what you can do, not who you are. That is not connection, that is consumption, and your soul is not here to be consumed. So choose your peace over pressure, your clarity over chaos, your solitude over shallow connections. And if someone calls you difficult for doing so, let them. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's survival. It's strength. It's sacred. It's your way of telling the world, my spirit matters too. You are not here to please the world. You are here to honor your light. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. 7. Live like you're free. Freedom isn't something the world gives you. It's something you reclaim, moment by moment, decision by decision. The tragedy is, most people will live their entire lives trapped, not by bars, not by chains, but by fear. Fear of what others will say, fear of disappointing someone, fear of failing, of standing out, of not being enough. And so they wait for the perfect moment, wait for validation, wait for permission to live. But that moment never comes. The world will never tell you, now is your time. That's something you must decide. Buddhism teaches us that the only true freedom comes when we are no longer slaves to attachment. Attachment to outcome, to reputation, to approval, to the illusion of control. But most people live in silent submission to expectations. They take the safe job, say the polite thing, follow the traditional path, all while their heart screams for something else. That scream slowly becomes a whisper, then a silence. And one day, they look back and realize they never really lived at all. They just existed inside a cage built by fear. You don't need to wait for the fear to go away to be free. You need to stop giving it power over your decisions. Freedom is not about fearlessness. It's about acting in spite of fear. It's about saying, I might be judged. I might be misunderstood. I might even fail, but I will live anyway. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you stop trying to impress, to perform, to please? That's the real you. That's the one who longs to be free. And that version of you, the one behind the masks, isn't concerned with what others think. It only wants truth, peace, movement, authentic expression, and that part of you is still there, waiting for you to set it free. So start living like you're free, not recklessly, but consciously, with presence, with purpose. Choose experiences that make your spirit feel alive. Say yes to what lights you up. Say no to what drains you. Stop apologizing for taking up space. You weren't put here to be silent and small. You were put here to shine, to speak, to walk your own path, even if no one else understands it. The truth is, freedom has a cost. It costs you the comfort of the crowd. It costs you approval, certainty, and sometimes even relationships. But what you gain in return is priceless. Yourself. When you live for yourself, you may lose people who love the version of you that kept them comfortable, but you will gain peace, alignment, integrity, and real connection, built not on performance but on truth. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that life is impermanent. Every moment is a chance to begin again, to walk a new path, to speak what you've silenced, to chase what you've put off. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are not too far behind. You are right where you need to be, to choose freedom now. Freedom is not always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet decision in the morning to follow your own rhythm. Sometimes it's the stillness of saying no without guilt. Sometimes it's the courage to leave, to rest, to breathe. It doesn't need to look radical to be powerful. The smallest choice can be the most liberating when it comes from your truth. And if you feel trapped right now, remember this: the door is not locked. It never was. The key has always been in your hands. The lock was fear. The bars were doubt. The guard was the belief that you had to earn your right to live fully, but you don't. You were born free. You've simply forgotten. And now it's time to remember. You don't need to justify your joy. You don't need to defend your dreams. You don't need to prove your worth by suffering for others. You were not created to survive. You were created to live fully, boldly, beautifully. And that kind of life begins the moment you stop waiting for permission. So today, live like you're free. Not because everything is perfect, not because everyone approves, but because your soul deserves nothing less. You've spent long enough holding your breath, dimming your light, following paths that never felt like home. Now is the time to choose you. Live with intention. Live with heart. Live like someone who remembers they weren't born to be caged, but to fly. Conclusion: set yourself free. You were not born to live in a cage built by fear, shaped by approval, or sealed by silence. You were born to live awake, to feel, to choose, to speak, and to walk a path that is fully your own. But somewhere along the way, you were taught to trade freedom for validation, to be liked more than to be real, to shrink rather than be misunderstood. That's why you feel the heaviness. That's why you feel disconnected, not from the world, but from yourself. Each of these lessons has pointed to one truth. You owe no one your obedience, your silence, or your sacrifice. You only owe yourself honesty, peace, and the courage to live your truth. The illusion of approval, the need to perform, the exhaustion of people-pleasing. These are not the costs of love. They are the chains of fear, and you can break them, not all at once, but choice by choice, word by word, breath by breath. Buddhism teaches us that the path to liberation is inward, that peace does not arrive from outside. It arises when you return home to your own spirit, when you begin to live from truth rather than performance, from alignment rather than expectation, from clarity rather than noise. You begin to feel something sacred, wholeness. So as you walk forward from this moment, remember this: you are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for wanting peace. You are simply awake. And when you live as if you are free, the world begins to reflect that freedom back to you. The journey ahead won't always be easy, but it will finally be yours. Now breathe, stand tall, and walk forward, unapologetically, courageously, and completely as you. This is your life. Live it fully, live it freely, live it for yourself,